A new report by the Intercultural Development Research Association, or IDRA, shows how getting rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at Texas colleges and public schools have made college access more difficult for some students. Chloe Latham-Scotts is the Deputy Director of Policy for IDRA. She co-authored this study, and we welcome you, Chloe, to KVUE News Midday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. All right, so your research looked at basically 2 Texas laws that got rid of DEI programs across college and public school systems. What were the impacts of that? What did you find?
Yes. So our study we're concluding a 2-year study since 2023, the impacts of the Texas law that banned diversity, equity, inclusion offices in colleges and universities, and then how that coincided with the Supreme Court's decision in 2023 to really strike down affirmative action in college admissions, and what have been the impacts of those policy changes on high school students' college access pathways. And what we've seen is that even though we were making decades of progress, the origin of diversity, equity, inclusion programs was to ameliorate and mitigate past racial discrimination. And we were making progress, although in slow strides in certain ways. And that has really been potentially stalled out because of lack of representation, lack of ability to offer trainings in high schools and in colleges, and how that might impact those college access pathways and connections that students rely on to go to college.
All right, so critics of DEI policies argue that they amount to preferential treatment. So what's your reaction to that? And what does the research say about whether these policies work or not?
Right. There is no really preferential treatment. It's about how students are able to get access to resources they really need. And that's something that we really heard a lot about in the study. The recent research brief covers that legal and policy landscape. And then we also spoke to over 90 Texans, mostly high school students, about what are those barriers to college access? What do you still need? And that drove the development of 3 resource toolkits. We heard about students needing to connect with each other more, counselors needing greater capacity to help students through those transitions to college, and also connecting parents more in the college information pathway. Earlier on, to advanced coursework and early college access opportunities for students. This was particularly important for students who might be the first generation in their family to go to college, and that significantly represents, more students who are Black, Latino, and maybe immigrant students as well.
Your research also found, I thought this was interesting. The study mentioned that Black students who had even one Black teacher by 3rd grade, I believe, were more likely to enroll in college. So what does that tell us about representation?
Absolutely. There's really robust decades of research on how representation between teachers, staff, the school climate and culture really matters for student outcomes. But you might see those outcomes 20 years down the line when a student's finally graduating from college, right? And so that's why those early pipelines, early information, and recognition of students' identities is very important for their ultimate success. You mentioned barriers earlier. What can parents do to help students navigate those barriers? Yes, one of the things that still surprises me is there's such a lack of knowledge for parents. There's a lot of information, but accessing that and early in a student's education remains a major barrier. So that's why we centered one of our toolkits from this study on connecting parents to each other, growing those parent networks, and really using parent engagement to expand school counselors' capacity, which we know is already strapped, to make sure that college opportunities are available and accessible and affordable for all families. What a necessary support system, right? Absolutely. We're running out of time, Chloe, but I want you to hit, what recommendations does the IDRA have for lawmakers in this upcoming session? We really need to continue monitoring the impact of these new policies. I mean, it's going to take several years to see the ongoing impact. We're still coming off of COVID-19, impacts to college enrollment, high school graduation. We know there's racial disparities in high school graduation rates and dropout rates. We need to make sure that students are being supported through good data, monitoring those studies, and making sure educators have what they need to serve their students. Chloe Latham-Scotts, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. All right.